Good evening, welcome if you're joining us this evening. My name is Ant Lyons, co-founder of Your Property Network magazine, and welcome on what is it? A bleak evening this evening to our webinar this evening with my very special guest, John Paul. So good evening, John.
Hi Ant, how are you doing?
Very good, thank you. Now, we're going to do a bit of housekeeping to start with. And a bit of an explanation, because there might be people who on the webinar this evening that have never been on one of our webinars before, and they are a bit different to some of the other sort of webinar trainings that happen out there. So what we do is I bring on my very good friends in property, people I've known often for more than a decade in the business, and people who are at the very, very top of their game. So these are people that I work with and people I've got a huge amount of respect for, and we bring them onto the webinar for, really, let's be honest, a bit of a grilling. So these webinars normally last around about 90 minutes, there or thereabouts, between an hour and 30 minutes, depending how many questions that you have this evening. So if you're furiously shouting at the microphone now, please stop. For the purposes of the webinar, you are muted. However, you can very much communicate with us using the chat facility. So you can message us in. If there's anything you're not sure about, you can ask us to clarify. If you want us to go back a slide, we can do. These webinars are quite different to perhaps some of the others that you might have been on. Sometimes webinars can be a bit of a sales pitch. They can feel like that. We really don't want that to be the case on the webinars that we run here. So tonight, it's all about content. And there'll be a small time at the end, 5-10 minutes at the end, where if you're interested in learning more and furthering your property education in the strategy that we're going to cover tonight, then you can do so. But it is all about content, and we want to cover your questions. And tonight we're going to be covering what we believe is probably the most misunderstood and the most underutilized property strategy out there. And we have gone to, I believe, the go-to guy in the UK who knows more about this than anyone else. He's done, I guess, numerous of these types of deals and put them together and brought it together in a format which we're going to understand this evening. So, John, rent to own. Would you agree it's one of those ones which is massively overlooked? Sometimes it doesn't feel the most sexy property strategy, and it's not that easy to get straight away, so people kind of skip past it.
I think so. I think it's because it's not. It hasn't got the shiny bells and whistles, and it is. I personally don't think it's complicated, but I can certainly understand how it can be perceived to be complicated and therefore understood and misunderstood. So there's not a lot of people doing it, especially to a high level. So
tonight, John, let's for people who don't know about you, you've been a regular contributor to YPM magazine over it's over 9 years we've been doing it now. You and I have known each other for the best part of a decade, and whenever I've got a kind of property problem and I want a sounding board, you're one of a very small number of people that I pick the phone up to and say, right, what would John do? So for those people who are perhaps not so familiar with you, tell us a little bit about your kind of background and your sort of property CV, John.
Right. Well, my name's John Paul. I'm from the northeast of England, County Durham, as you can probably tell by the accent. Well, I'll start right at the beginning, actually. That isn't me, by the way. That's a little chap called Billy Elliot, and I've put that on there because if anybody's seen the film Billy Elliot, that takes place in a little colliery town called Easington. And that's pretty much where I've been brought up, where I've come from. I'm very proud to be from the northeast of England, very proud to be working class. My dad was a miner, my granddad was a miner, and in fact, my children are the first generation of my family that no one has been down the mines or worked in heavy engineering. So when I say I am working class, you can't get any more working class than me. And what I'm saying and what I'm telling you this for is hopefully it will set the scene up as to how we came about using rent to own, the way I operate my business, the way I operate as a person and a businessman. So my dad had an engineering company, DLI Engineering, up in the northeast of England, and it did a lot of sort of heavy machinery work and, Caterpillar, Komatsu, that type of thing. very successful, employed 40 odd people, 40 odd staff. But unfortunately, he passed away extremely quickly due to cancer, in probably about two weeks and 2 days, and it absolutely decimated the family. To make things worse, 3 months after that, because of the lack of systems in the business, the company went bust, and we absolutely lost the lot. So that was really my first foray into business, being thrust into the deep end of a failing business because my dad, the managing director, had died. And one thing that did sort of bring to light to me was systems, or the lack of systems that was in the business. So if anybody's seen me or we're connected on social media, Facebook, or you've seen me writing in the YPN, it generally is around systems and how to structure your business with processes and procedures. And rent to own is no different. As with any and every strategy, if it's structured right and if it's got the correct processes and correct procedures, it can be incredibly lucrative and it can work very, very well. And one thing we do pride ourselves on is whatever we do strategy-wise, we make sure we do it to the very, very best of our ability. But sort of taking it back a little bit, I was a little bit, after we lost my father and I didn't really know what to do, I decided, I was very, very big on sport. And I was playing rugby to a high standard. I was doing martial arts to quite a high standard. So as you do, I decided to become a professional cage fighter. So that's me on top of that chap. I was down at the networking event down in Liverpool probably about 5-6 years ago, and I made the joke, that's how we collect the rent up in the north of England. And this little old dear at the front of the sort of the audience started giving me what for, saying I was a bully and stuff, and we had to tell her it was clearly a joke, albeit.
And in fairness, John, this is what, one of the very few fights you did win. Is that right?
Yeah, I had a very poor record. Thanks very much for that.
I can say that there's 300 miles between us at the moment. So
I'll see you next week. But yeah, so the reason I've brought that up is it's sort of giving you an idea of how we operate, because when you become a sportsman of that, you know, in that type of sport, there's certain characteristics you need. Hard work, hard graft, determination, are two of them, and sort of consistency as well. The reason I've brought hard graft into it is because you have to work hard at every single strategy or any strategy. There is no magic pill you can take to make you the best in the world or whatever you do. There's no sort of shiny techniques or no, you know, hidden art to make you the best rent-to-own strategist or service accommodation or HMO specialist. You have to work hard. You know, determination, because you will have the ups and the downs as with any strategy, and you've also got to be consistent at it. Now, because of those three things in our business, it's sort of made us pretty successful in whatever we do, especially in the letting agency. So I've got a string of 6 letting agencies and estate agencies, and we've been extremely fortunate to win several awards and have several industry firsts. And this is just a selection of some of the photographs of us winning various awards. So those are at a particular group of awards called the Sunday Times Letting Agency of the Year Awards, which are probably they are the biggest and the best awards in our particular industry. I can say that because we've won the others as well. And I can honestly generally say that out of the ones that we've been to and the ones that we've featured quite heavily, and these are the best well run, they're the most competitive. So on the top left, the blonde lady I'm stood next to is Adele. That's my managing director, and that was us winning the best letting agency in the North. And we've won that the last 4 years. The one on the bottom left is where we won the best letting agency in the UK, which is extremely satisfying because I think Countrywide came second and Belvoir came third that year. So it was very satisfying to beat a company that had just floated for $750 million about 6 months previous. So that was really nice. Bottom right was Adele and I picking up the best training and development in the UK last year. And the top right was myself when I was very fortunate enough to be given the outstanding contribution to lettings. And that's why I'm looking a little bit shocked, because I didn't expect that in the slightest. But again, that's sort of given the indication, and it's given the idea that whatever we do, we genuinely do it to the best of our ability. And that really reflects in the way we've set up rent to own. And when I talk about how we set up rent to own and the lengths we've gone to spending the money on making sure it doesn't need to be FCA regulated, etc., it'll start to fit in to say why we do it the way we do. Now, because of those awards and because of our standing in the industry and being very fortunate enough to be recognised at where we are, We've appeared quite heavily on various publications. So I've been interviewed on Sky. We appeared on BBC One Meet the Landlords a few years ago. Channel 4, Britain's Benefit Tenants. You know, I've been a regular contributor to The Independent, Daily Mail, The Guardian, etc., etc. But it's all because of the way we structure the business. You know, these types of people are not going to go to people who have not structured the business in a certain way. So it all adds to the credibility of what we do, and also rent to own. I think it was Channel 5 interviewed us about rent to own. It was just happened, I think it was speaking on the political theme, I think it was the last general election, the Liberal Democrats had brought something out about rent to own, and therefore they asked us about our rent to own strategy as well. So it got a lot of sort of publicity because of the general political climate at that time. So tonight, what we're going to talk about, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about rent to own. I'm going to give you a bit of an overview in the next couple of slides. But in the main, I'm going to show you how rent to own can, if you're a landlord, how it can bulletproof your income. I've put quite a few of my properties on rent to own. If you're a letting agent, and I think there's a few letting agents out there, how can it substantially increase your income and beat the tenant admin fee ban? So for those of you that don't know, the government have decided that at some point in the future, tenant fees, upfront tenant fees, will be banned. That's probably going to be for landlords as well. So it's not just going to be letting agents, it's going to be if you're self-managing and you charge a tenant a fee to come and view your property and to do all the paperwork and the administrative, that will probably be banned in some way, shape or form also. If you're a tenant buyer, how to find your forever home, and I'll explain a little bit about what a tenant buyer is, and I'll explain a little bit about how I'm a tenant buyer and how I've purchased my home and my forever home, and I've actually got that as a case study in this as well, so you can see that how rent to own can help you find your perfect home. And also if you're a deal sourcer, how it can add another tool to your toolkit. So when you go on deal sourcing properties, or you're a deal packager and you go and speak to people vendors who owe more than their property is worth, where normally you may have walked away from it and said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Using rent to own, you can now help that person and you can monetize that deal. So the 4 demographics, landlord, letting agent, tenant buyer, or deal sourcer, you can help if you're any or all of those 4 things. So for instance, I'm a landlord, I've got a letting agency, I'm also a tenant buyer, and we've got a deal sourcing service in one of our businesses. So for us, rent to own has hit all 4 of those spots. I do know people who are just tenant buyers, I just know letting agents and also landlords. So rent to own can help in all of those 4 areas. So we're going to show you how to increase the net profit of your personal portfolio by up to 28% like I did. And notice I said net profit. That's very, very important, because it's a little bit like turnover for vanity, profit for sanity. It's a little bit about rent for vanity, profit for sanity. In rent to own, we don't concentrate on the rent charged, we concentrate on the profit. And the profit is all costs, all what is left after all costs have been taken out. How to find and live in your forever home so you don't have to wait until you're in your 60s, your 70s, and which unfortunately as entrepreneurs and business people, we plough so much energy and resources and wealth into growing our businesses. We tend not to be able to enjoy that wealth until we are in our 60s and 70s, and it's too late. You know, my children will be being brought up in my forever home. You know, my youngest Bella was born here. She wasn't, when we moved in, she wasn't around. Jack was 3 or 4. My eldest Stephanie was 7 or 8. So my kids will have enjoyed our home while they were young enough, and I was in my mid-30s when we moved in here, rather being in my 60s and 70s and being too old to enjoy it.
And that's a really interesting point, isn't it, John? Because we know we're building our businesses, and property in particular can be hugely capital intensive, and you know we might be ploughing our money into those, or reinvesting in more properties, and you know not necessarily using that money to kind of buy our dream home. So we've got an amazing case study you're going to talk us through later on how to do that.
Yeah, I've got a couple of other case studies as well. So I think we talk about 3 in the presentation. So 1 is if I'm a tenant buyer, and 2 are landlords. We're also going to discuss how to monetize deal when the vendor or landlord owes more than the property is worth, and that's really, really important, because the amount of people who have bought in 2004, 5, 6, 7 and beginning of 8, and the property prices haven't recovered still in certain areas. So those people where traditionally you wouldn't have been able to help them or monetize the deal, and we can do that now. And also, by working with letting agents, you will both make more money. So this isn't just if you're a letting agent, this is if you're a deal source or a deal packager. Taking rent to own to letting agents, because I guarantee very, very few letting agents understand rent to own and know how it works. You can take the deals, you can take the concept, the product of rent to own to a letting agent, and you will both make a lot more money than what you currently are. Cool. So, as with any new strategy, there are going to be issues or perceived issues with rent to own, as why you can't or you shouldn't get started. That's the same with any strategy. You know, there's always going to be people with negative thoughts in their head why I can't or why I shouldn't do this. And in my experience, when I speak to people or clients or mentees, they come up with the same 3 reasons. The first one is it's complicated, it's too hard to understand. But to be honest, if I can understand it, then you can. I'm not that academic. I used to get punched in the face for a living, so that tells you something. And you don't know what you don't know. So when people look at rent to own, or they'll hear me talk about it, they'll say, "Boy, that sounds really, really complicated." I promise you, it's not. You don't have to be a solicitor or a property expert to know how it works. And the point is, I've made mistakes on this, and my staff have, and we've adapted and we've evolved it now, so you don't have to make those mistakes. You can learn by how we've messed up, and that's the important thing. It's all about how we learn and we get better and better and better.
John, I know when we started talking about, not we as in you and I, but we as in the property community started talking about rent to own probably about 6 or 7 years ago, when it was started coming in, you know, I wouldn't say common parlance, but, you know, it was a term that was used a bit. I think it would be fair to say that there were a few people that could see the opportunity, that they could see that kind of, you know, piecing these deals together and kind of sitting in the middle of the deal quite often. So, you know, even on properties that you didn't own, there was a lot of money to be made. They did it incredibly badly. And sometimes not that ethically, or, you know, perhaps strayed into arenas where actually, you know, they could do quite a lot of damage. And I think you've made it your mission to do this the right way for all parties and still make a profit at the same time.
Absolutely. Where we're from, it's a very community-driven sort of area, you know, in the collieries of the northeast. So it's, you know, your reputation is everything. It takes you 10 years to build it, 10 seconds to lose it. So with rent to own, I was seeing people ripping people off. I was seeing other people not doing it very ethically and not doing it very well. So it was a case of studying what they weren't doing and what they should be doing, and just trying to adapt it and trying to make sure that when we did it absolutely spot on. So we spent, honestly, and if I told you, it would make your eyes water, the amount of money we've spent on solicitors and barristers and counsel and, you know, rig surveyors and getting their opinion, and estate agents, and one of the top FCA compliance companies in the UK. I mean, you know, I got a 9-page report and it cost me a lot of money. Just to make sure that the way we structured rent to own was absolutely legitimate and above board, and it wasn't, you know, unfair terms and conditions, and nobody was losing out. And for me, it's really important that the landlord wins in this, but it's equally as important that the tenant buyer wins in this as well. And going throughout the presentation tonight, well, I'll bring up scenarios of where it could be sort of taken advantage of, and where I have seen other people take advantage of rent to own, and how not to structure a deal. So yeah, we'll talk about that slightly later on. But one of the second reason why people don't want to start or have perceived issues is that it's very expensive to get all the paperwork and the contracts. And I'm not going to lie, it is quite expensive, especially if you do it right and you do it correctly to a high standard. But as Ant said, there's a little bit of an offer at the end if you do want to take your learnings a bit further on. But we've made it the most cost-effective way and the most cost-effective time to start rent to own if you take advantage of this offer. But there's no pressure, completely up to you. And the third thing, and this is a bit of an oxymoron actually, nobody is doing this, so it can't be a good strategy. Well, for me, it's the perfect time to do it because nobody is doing it. Because the fact that few people are doing it means it's a great time to beat the rush. So I've been doing this strategy for a number of years now, probably about 4.5, 5 years now. We researched for a good 6 months to a year before we did the first one. I've got my own property that I live in. I'm a tenant buyer. Our letting agency manages about 65, 70 properties. I've got another dozen, 15 of my properties on this. So we've got the proof that this strategy absolutely works, and the results are there for all to see. So it does work, and I still am amazed that there's not many people actually doing this strategy, because it is an absolute beauty. It's a win-win for everybody.
Okay, so for people who are really new to it, John, perhaps we'll take some time now to just give an overview of what to rent own is, because the concept's quite straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I'm just going to flick through a couple of slides, and then we'll get. I'll tell you what. I want to talk about this. So what this is not a get-rich-quick strategy, right? And the reason I really need to sort of emphasise that is because the way that it's rent-to-own is structured, it could be taken advantage of quite easy. So this is not a get-rich-quick strategy. It's not a cash flow strategy as well. It's not a cash flow strategy in that the tenant buyer pays rent as in normal, and they also pay a slight top-up. That top-up goes in a secure client account. Now, one of the ways I did say that I was going to explain how it could be taken advantage of if you get some unethical and unscrupulous people is that they use that top-up for their own cash flow. It's not their money. It is absolutely 100% still the tenant buyer's money. So it's got to be secure, put to one side. That is not your money. This is not a do nothing and find my perfect home. As I said before, when that picture of me when I was doing the martial arts, and I said hard graft, hard work. If you're going to make this a success, as with everything, you need to work. You need to work hard on this. You can't just rock up at a house and rent-to-own strategy works. You need to be able to put the time in, build up your pipeline in order to get the best out of rent-to-own. And this is not a load of sales BS. I'm actually doing this. I'm doing this on a day-to-day basis. So cool. So just to answer your question, what is rent-to-own, right? You're letting a property. So it's like as a traditional let, you're letting a property, but you're letting it to a tenant buyer. Now, it's really important that those two words, tenant buyer, are very prevalent in that sentence. A normal tenant is somebody who is renting a property and doesn't buy it or hasn't got any aspirations of buying it, right? A tenant buyer wants to buy that property. Now, in that definition, quite a few tenants will actually be tenant buyers. They just don't know that they can buy the property. So a tenant buyer is somebody who has aspirations of owning their own home. The tenant buyer in the property will rent the property for a pre-agreed rent. So say, for example, we set out £500, right? And that is set for the pre-agreed term. And the term is always between 5 and 10 years. So just imagine traditional let, right? Instead of you're a landlord, you can increase the rent at any time. The rent is fixed for a period of time. And instead of, a fixed term being 6 months or a year, it's between 5 and 10 years. And there's a very, very important point why it has to be 5 and 10 years. And that's this. The people who are perfect tenant buyers for rent-to-own are those who potentially have got low credit rating or haven't got enough deposits saved up. If we put them in for 2 or 3 years and they've got poor credit, 2 or 3 years is not a fair amount of time for that tenant buyer to become financially responsible and repair their credit file. 5 to 10 years is. The most anybody has taken us up is 7 years, the least is 5 years. But if after 5 years that tenant buyer still has got a CCJ against them, or they haven't paid the bills and they've got low credit, then that is not your fault. That is not your problem. That is the tenant buyer's issue for not being financially responsible. But we don't want to set this up to fail. Hence why it can't be 1 or 2 years. Again, somebody else I've seen doing this who's done quite a few was 18 months, 2 years, 2.5 years, with somebody with 3 CCJs. Knowing fine well they would never ever be able to get a mortgage at the end of that 2-year period. So therefore, they would forfeit any top up that they had saved, and that could be £2,000, £3,000, £4,000. So that's not right and that's not fair. So that's why we do 5 to 10 years. At the end of that 5 or 10 year period, say for this example, say a 5 year, they've got the option to buy that property. So they can then say, yeah, I've done my 5 years, I've got my money saved up, I've got my mortgage advisor, I've got my mortgage, I want to buy that property. Now, the other important aspect to note is that the property price is pre-agreed. So we can't turn around and say at the beginning of the option, the beginning of the 5 year period, we agreed £100,000, and at the end of it, the landlord turns around and says, oh, I want £160,000. And therefore the tenant buyer hasn't saved up enough money as a deposit to purchase that property. Everything is pre-agreed, everything is upfront, everything is contracted up, legally binding documents, and we all know where we are. So how does it work? So in a nutshell, the tenant buyer rents a property from a landlord, right? The purchase price, as we mentioned, so that the end purchase price and the option period, the 5 to 10 year, are pre-agreed. The tenant buyer pays rent as normal, right? And it's normally around about 95% of market rent. Now, before everybody says, well, I'm reducing my rent. If I can get £500, why would I charge £450 or £475? Remember at the beginning, I said net profit, right? Because the tenant buyer, right, stays for a length of time, stays for the 5, 10 years, is responsible for all the repairs, which we'll touch on in a minute. There's no maintenance. There's no repeat tenant fine fees. There's no void periods because they're in there for 5 to 10 years. So over the length of the option, the net profit is statistically a lot higher than traditional rent. The tenant buyer also pays a top-up as well. Now, the top-up goes into a secure client account, right, and that is their money. And that will, over the 5-year period, add up to 10% of the purchase price of the property. So if the purchase price is £100,000, over the 5 years, the tenant buyer will have saved up £10,000. So it's a little bit like try before you buy. You're living in it and you're also using it as a savings account to save up your money, your deposit, your 10%. So at the end of the 5 year, you can purchase that property. So it's a very, very safe and secure way of doing that. And yeah, the top-up saves up to be the deposit for the property. So this is quite interesting. So the tenant buyer is contractually responsible for the repairs. And notice I said contractually because there is a difference. Legally, in common law, is that the tenant buyer, the landlord is responsible. And if you want to get really nerdy, it's the Landlord and Tenant Act, Section 11. If you want to lose an hour of your life and never get it back, I suggest you read that. But contractually, the tenant buyer is responsible for the repairs. Now, if the tenant buyer goes to a solicitor or goes to environmental health or the council and says, right, my boiler's broken, my landlord says I'm responsible for it, but you know, under Section 11, they have to repair it. You're right, the landlord does have to repair it. But we've got a clause in our contract that states that the landlord can take the repair money from the tenant buyer's top up. So the landlord is never out of pocket. So the tenant buyer's top up, which is in that secure client account, the repairs come out of that, and it is up to the tenant buyer to replenish that. The tenant buyer often improves the property. Now, I've put often improves.
John, I was just going to jump in and say that, you know, for all of the landlords who are on here, you know, who've been doing this a few years now, will appreciate how much those repairs really can add up to over the course of a year or over the course of 5 years. And I'm always trying to sort of crunch the numbers on mine, and I always come to, I think, you know, as a percentage of kind of gross rent, my repairs cost somewhere between 10 and 15% of that figure easily. So, you know, we're squeezing that margin down, so we're locking in more profit by having a tenant buyer who's responsible for the maintenance, as it would be in a commercial lease, I guess.
Exactly that. It's like an FRI, a fully repair and insuring lease, effectively, but in a tenancy agreement. You know, and of all the ones we've done, like I say, we've done quite a few now. Once or twice we've had where the tenant has said, you know, isn't the landlord supposed to do it? And we just passed on the contract and said, well, you've signed this. You know, you can make them do it, but they will take it from the fee, from the top-up fee. So either way, you're going to be paying for it. Yeah, not a problem. We'll go for it. So it's really important to note that the contractually responsible repairs, but the amount of money that saves. I mean, I think you were 10 to 15%. You know, I'm probably 15 to 20% where we are, a bit further up north. It's a huge amount of money in savings. And because there's only one tenant, hopefully, moving in the entire 5-year period, you know, I think the national average is a tenant churn is 1 every 18 months. So if you use a letting agent, that's a tenant fine fee every 18 months. Maybe a void every 18 months while another tenant moves in. With this, it's just a tenant ideally consistently.
Redecoration. carpet, all that sort of stuff. Every time someone moves out, it's a lick of paint, it's some new carpet, it's some flooring, it's some replacing the doors on the kitchen units. All that stuff is really easy for those costs to rack up.
Well, this point's really quite interesting. This will sort of prick a few people's ears up. I said the tenant buyer often improves the property. The actual trueness of it is that in every single case that we put a tenant buyer in, about 75 of them, the tenant buyer has improved the property. Every single one. I've only put often, just in case the one-off, maybe at some point in the future doesn't do anything to improve the property. But that could be from a lick of paint and to we've had new boilers put in, we've had double glazing in. The first one we ever did, which is in a little place just outside Sunderland, he put a conservatory on the back of the house. And as a tenant buyer myself, until I got into the mentality and into the mindset of being a tenant buyer, when this first came out and we said, oh, they'll improve the property, and I personally said, no, this will never happen. But now I'm a tenant buyer, and we call it rent to own rather than rent to buy, because if you own something, you've got more of an emotional connection. Myself and Gemma, my partner, and the kid, we believe this is our house, even though we haven't got the mortgage on it yet. So she's getting Laura Ashley wallpaper, and she's in this room painted, in that room, in the garden done. And I'm thinking in my head, but I don't actually own this property yet. But once you get in the mindset of rent to own, the tenant buyers really do improve the property. And if they don't go ahead with the property, for whatever reason, which I'm going to talk about in the next bit, you've got a vastly improved and valuable property. They have paid money to improve the value of your property. It's truly a win-win for landlords. So at the end of the option period, pardon the pun, there are 4 options. So they can buy the property, which is brilliant. Everybody wins. So you've got the pre-agreed price over the, say, 5-6 year, whatever it is. Comes to the end of the 5 year, they go away and get a mortgage. Brilliant. Great. The second one is they can walk away. So for instance, at any point up to the 5 years or at the end of the 5 year period, the circumstances might change, right? It's not their fault. It's not your fault. It's just the way it is. Might be a single man. All of a sudden he settles down with a partner and they have, kids. The 1-bedroom flat or the 2-bedroom starter home that he was going to buy and rent to own is not fit for purpose now. But he walks away. But he does lose all his top up that he's saved up. The third option is he can assign the contract. And for those of you guys who aren't familiar with lease options, effectively what that means is he can sell the property on at a profit. So if the purchase price is £110,000, he can't purchase it himself. Maybe his credit rating hasn't improved. Maybe he hasn't got enough money saved up. He can sell it for, say, £115, £5,000 more than what was agreed, and he can pocket £5,000. I'll be honest, it's a little bit unlikely with the house prices are going to go up so high. However, it is an option should the tenant buyer fail to use it. And then the last one is they can always renegotiate. Tenant buyer can come to the end of the contract and say, look, I need another 6 months, so I need another year to save up the money. Can I have another year, Mr. Landlord? And the landlord can say, yeah. However, you've had the rent fixed for 5 years, let's put up £50 a month, or I want another £5,000 on top of the purchase price. But at the end of the day, it is a negotiation. The power at that point is a little bit in favour of the landlord because he can say no. But we don't work with people that we feel are going to be unfair. So we've genuinely turned down at least double the amount of people that we actually work with. So people who say, all right, I want the top up, or it's a £100,000 house, and say, right, I want £180,000 for it. So we turn down a lot of people because you've got to, as with every strategy in business, and I mean, you'll be a prime example of this. You only work with people that you like. You only work with people that you trust. And it's the same with us. We don't want to use this strategy with anybody that we don't feel, or we feel that would take advantage of any tenant buyers. Right, landlords, bulletproof your portfolio. So because of the increased net profit, as in there's no voids, there's virtually zero arrears, and the maintenance, which is a massive, massive thing. We did a bit of an analysis on our portfolio of rent-to-own properties, and the year pre them coming on rent-to-own, and the year post being on rent-to-own, there was a 28% increase net income of the portfolio, which is a huge amount. It's an absolute massive amount. It's ideal if you own more and close to the value of your home. Now, the reason I said that is because of the way we work out the purchase price. So you probably, a few of you are probably thinking, well, that's great. So we know how much the property is worth now. That's true. So we get a RICS valuation. The landlord pays for that. So we've got to have a baseline. So how do you work out the future purchase price? So do you just, lick your finger, stick it in the air? No, of course not. We need some sort of structure, some sort of transparent and fair structure that we can work out the future price that they purchase the property at. And we do this. RICS valuation. Say the RICS valuation comes in at £100,000 for round numbers. We then add on 4% every year, right? So over a 5-year period, it's 20%, right? So the purchase price is £120,000. Is that clear? So it's 4% every year for the length of the option period. Now, where we got that 4% from is that I sat down and I analysed all the data from Land Registry, Halifax, the nationwide, UK-wide, and I got the national increases, the average national increases over the past 15, 20, 25 years, depending on which of those websites you use. And the average, believe it or not, over the last 20, 25 years, increase in property in the UK as a whole is 7.2%. And that's even including the peaks and the troughs. I then wanted to say, I wanted to be fair because, this latest crash, I knew has decimated a lot of parts of the UK in terms of property prices. And I truly believe that we wouldn't recover as quick as what we may have done in the past. So we virtually halved it, that 7.2% to 4%, and that's where we get that 4%. So I also think at some point in the future this is going to be regulated, and I think it should, a little bit like SAR. So whatever government organisation comes back or whatever regulatory body comes back in 4, 5, 6 years and said, right, John, how did you work out the purchase price? I can say, well, I use your figures. I use the government's figures to work out the average purchase, the average increase in house prices, and then I've virtually halved it. I knocked off 40%. So it's going to be very, very fair, and we're not going to get a lot of hassle from anybody trying to regulate it at a future date. It's great because there's no maintenance, as the tenant buyer is contractually responsible for all the repairs. It's a brilliant exit strategy for capital gains tax. So I'm not an accountant, I've got to say that, but the capital gains tax sort of relief at the minute is about 11,200 or something per person. So a few of our landlords are buying rent-to-own properties and they're exiting it on an annual basis. So they're buying one to exit in 5 years, another one to exit in 6 years, another one to exit in 7 years. The wife's buying one to exit in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years. So they're getting those cash, so there's capital gains tax exemptions, and they're using that up on an annual basis. And as I said, if they use one in your wife's name and one in your name, you're getting it double bubble.
John, I guess this is very good for a sort of a planned portfolio exit. So if we've got people who are saying, okay, well, I've got some money, I'm going to put it into a buy-to-let, but what I want is surety. So I want to know that in 5 years' time, I'm going to be able to make my £10,000 or £15,000 profit at the back end on the sale, and I want to lock in my profit through the term of the tenancy over that, say, 5-year term. Rent to own works very, very well in providing surety of returns over that kind of mid period. So people who have sort of planned portfolio of, okay, I'm going to exit in year 5 and year 6. It works very well for those type of people.
It does. I mean, you hit the nail on the head. So not only are you benefiting from the annual uplift in rent, 28%. So over a 5-year period, you're getting, 120% increase in your actual rent. But you're getting the increase. You know where you are. So if you owe 100 on it and you've agreed a price of 120, you've already locked in your 20 grand profit. Yes, the tenant might not go through with it, but the point is they also lose their top up. So they've got a financial vested interest in going ahead with the purchase. So if you look at it, the worst thing that can possibly happen is they don't purchase the property, but you've more than doubled your rent over the past, your income, your profit over the last 5 years. The tenants improved the property, added capital value to it. It's worth more than what you had, and you've got a much improved property that you can sell on the open market if you want to. So the worst case scenario that can happen, I know a lot with sort of HMOs and LHA and service accommodation, coming to sell it, you can only sell it possibly to another investor, or potentially in LHA areas, they're very, very hard to sell, and you might have to take a bit of a hit. The thing with rent to own is you've got so many options how to exit it, and I think that's really, really important. It's one of the best strategies for long-term exit that I've ever come across. It really is.
And John, just when you're, I know we're going to we jump about on these a little bit, but how do you go about vetting a potential tenant buyer? Because what you don't want, what nobody wants in this, is someone who thinks, oh, this sounds like a great idea, and in month 4 they're a bit flighty, they've gone off and they're decided to get a job overseas or whatever. You want people who are a bit more grounded and a bit more planned, I guess. So do you do any particular kind of vetting on those people?
Yeah, so it's exactly like a traditional let. So you want to do your reference and checks, your credit referencing, just to make sure they've got no. You've got to be a bit mindful that a lot of people this is going to be suitable for have got poor credit. So it's not a case of, oh, you've got a CCJ, you can't rent the house out. What you're looking for is people that aren't skipping from house to house, they haven't got police, criminal records. CCJs are fine. They're the ones that are going to be, they're going to really, really love this strategy. So I wouldn't be put off by those type of tenants. But other than that, it's just trying to find a tenant as you would for a traditional let. You want the best tenant you can possibly get, somebody that's not, as you say, like a risk that they're going to be very flighty after 4 months. But the other thing is, well, because they're building up the top up, they don't get that back. So after 4, 5, 6, 7 months, if they're paying £200-300 a month, they'll have a couple of grand saved up in the top up. They don't get that back, full stop. If they break the tenancy agreement, they don't pay the rent, they don't pay the top up, you can evict them as normal only if they break the AST. So you can't just after 5 months say, all right, I want to kick them out so I'll keep the top up. If they break the tenancy agreement and you need to evict them as you would a traditional let, they don't get that money back, that top up. So from a financial point of view, it's massively in the tenant's best interest to be a model tenant, to pay the rents, not get any arrears, no antisocial behaviour. We've had an issue lately where one of the tenants had a couple of late night parties, Friday, Saturday, it was just after Christmas. The next door neighbour phoned us up. We sent a letter out to him. He has been a model tenant ever since, because we put in it, if we evict you under clause blah, 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 you will not get your top up back. He's been in there 3 years. He's got like £6,000 saved up. He's on the phone virtually, and I'll be great, I want no more parties. The next door neighbour said he's been absolutely perfect ever since. It's a little bit of leverage, it's a little bit of stick and carrot to ensure you get the best tenant you possibly can.
And John, how does this work for? And I know we've got. I'm conscious of time. I'm always conscious of time. I'm looking at this thinking, blimey, nearly 45 minutes has gone already, and we've only scratched the surface. So we can see for a sort of planned portfolio, increased profitability, locking in the profit. Worst case scenario, our tenant, something drastic changes in their life, they go off the rails in year 3 or whatever, but we actually retain that deposit. If they break that top up amount, it might be 5, 6, 7, 8,000 pounds. If they break the terms and conditions of the tenancy agreement, we can invoke that and retain that. So we can see how it can work. How does this work for people who are not necessarily looking to buy properties themselves, but maybe source? Is that something we're going to cover in a few minutes?
Yeah, it's actually probably about 3 or 4 or 5 slides time.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'll go over it then. I'll quickly just talk about the less hassle thing. So a really interesting statistic was we did a bit of time and motion analysis. Effectively, we asked our rent-to-own manager what you're spending all your time on, and we asked him to diarise it over a period of a month. What on an hourly basis, what do you spend it on rent-to-own or traditional lets? The length of time it took him to look after the 70 rent-to-own properties, right, was the equivalent to looking after 7 and a bit traditional lets. It's because he didn't have any, which is huge. It's virtually 10 to 1 when you think about it. And that was because he didn't have to deal with any maintenance issues. So there's no boiler problems, boilers going off or windows getting cracked or antisocial behaviour or telling people to cut the grass. There was none of that, absolutely none. The biggest time consuming part of looking after rent-to-own properties was he had to send the statements out to the landlords and the tenant buyers. That was literally it. And we're even getting around that, trying to become even more efficient. We're getting a bit of a portal built on our website and on our Rentman system, property software system, where landlords and tenants can log in, 24/7, 365, and get their statements. So that ultimately will take even less hassle. That will give Stuart, our rent-to-own manager, even more time to do what he needs to do and help the business. So from a hassle point of view, rent-to-own is very, very hassle-free. And the tenant buyer improves the property. That is just that's the icing on the cake. That you've got somebody who's paying the rent, no arrears, no top up, you increased income, they're responsible for all the repairs, and then they want to go, can I put a new boiler in? Can I put double glazing in? One of the guys, one of the sort of the case studies I'll talk about, it's a £75,000 property and they put 2.5, 3 grand's worth of windows in. They don't even own the property, but the landlord is absolutely over the moon because he didn't have the money to put the brand new windows in, but the tenant buyer did. So in every case, the tenant buyer has improved the property in some way, shape or form. So this is an interesting one. So this is the one I've had some amazing feedback on when I wrote the article last edition in your magazine. So this is the one that everybody's been trying to get in touch with us about. How do you find your forever home? Love your house. How did you find it? That type of thing. So this idea.
Yeah, John, before we do it, let's do a big straw poll so we can use the chat facility here on there. I'd like to ask people to your dream home now. So if you could move up the property ladder now without the need for saving up, 50, 100, 200,000 pounds in a deposit, would you do that now? Would you be interested in learning how to do that now? So let's just see if we can get some answers on that. John, if you carry on while people are messaging us in.
Yeah, cool. So this is really good if you're a tenant buyer for three things. So if you've got no deposit saved up, if you've got poor credit, or if you're self-employed. So I definitely fell in the top bracket. I didn't have enough deposit saved up. So I'm very open, as you know. I'll need £200,000 to buy my property. So as an entrepreneur and a businessman, we don't have that sort of money. It's either tied up in property. I was buying commercial buildings at the time. I was actually opening new branches, starting new businesses. So you don't have that sort of money just in your back pocket. So when this property came along, if it wasn't for the fact that we got it on rent to own, it would have been snapped up, at the click of your fingers. So I wouldn't have had the time to save up to buy that property. It's great if you've got poor credit because you've got that 5 to 10 years to try and replenish your credit file and repair it. And it's also very good if you're self-employed. I don't know a single self-employed person who on purpose pays a lot of tax. The majority of people I know make it look as though the income isn't high, so they don't pay tax. And that's great, so you don't pay a lot of tax, but conversely, it's not great if you ever want to get a mortgage. What's good about this is that you can structure your business, so for a 2-3 year period, unfortunately, you've got to pay a lot of tax, but your income goes up, so when you do go to get a mortgage, the mortgage guy can say, right, we've got something we can work with now. Based on your income, you can get a mortgage of XYZ, therefore you can purchase this property. So this is my property. So this is the old rectory, and as you can see, it's quite a big special property. And this is a type of house that we never ever thought we would get to live in. This is beyond our wildest dreams, as corny and cliche as that sounds. But this is the sort of property that you walk past and you think that's something I aspire to be, but you don't quite think you're ever going to get there. But the way we got this is we're walking past a corporate estate agent. Went in, saw the properties up for sale and to let, started to discuss rent to own. The corporate didn't have a clue what I was on about, and I said, look, just organise the viewing, I'll sort it out from there. Went to meet them, and Ken and Jill, they're absolutely brilliant, our landlords. They live next door, actually. They own the coach house next door, and we've got a 5-year option. So it ends in May 2019. We've agreed a purchase price of £650,000. I said by at the end of this year, ideally we're going to be buying by September. And we've gone with the Coventry, I believe, which is a mortgage company that's going to allow us to buy this property based on rent to own. They understand what rent to own is. They know we've saved up the money, and they know how we've done it, and they're absolutely fine with it. Which sort of answers the question: do mortgage companies and mortgage lenders allow rent to own? Yes, they do, if you explain it like this. So that's the tenant buy, and that's the forever home and how it can benefit you. So that for me is probably the most important thing. So that's allowed me to live in a property of that type, that sort, for me, for my kids, to bring up my children in that environment. Deal source.
John, just very quickly, I need to give you a bit of feedback that we've got quite a few messages getting going, oh my God, that looks like a palace. And I think if someone's just messaging saying, isn't it meant to be grim up north? So yeah, I mean, it's a stunning place. It's an absolutely stunning place. And we've had quite a few people messaging saying, actually, do you know what? These kind of creative strategies that enable us to not only make money, not only put a few quid in the bank, but actually change the quality of life for us and our families. It's amazing when we can use the sort of creative tools that we have in property to further the standard of our own lives in such a way.
That's really important, because I was talking to somebody today, and they said, why do we work as entrepreneurs? Why do we work so hard? It's because we want to provide a better life for us and our families, and give them options. So, but the option is to provide a nice home. It's, if you look at motivational theory and Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you want to get all nerdy, home and security is a big motivating factor for people. And to have a house like that me and Gemma will probably never move out, and we'll just pass it from one of the children to the other children. It's such an important thing, and to purchase that and have that stability in the home and have the legacy, so your kids can, live there and have their kids there, and families and weddings and whatever. It's just, for me, it's a main driving factor of why I do what I do, providing for my family, and that's why Rent to Own has helped us so much. Right, so deal sources. So it's another tool for your toolkit. So because this is really, really unique, there's low or zero competition. So we've been doing this for 4.5, 5 years now. And still in the Northeast, as far as we're aware, certainly in our patch, nobody else is doing this. It's crazy that we're going out to vendors' properties. The funny thing is, Anne, our competition know what we're doing, and they still don't do it. So it's crazy. It's like, I don't get it. I can't get my head round. They see us promoting it on our Facebook, on the various websites and stuff. I've seen some of them come and listen to me talk, and I won't be surprised if a couple are on this webinar now. And I guarantee they still won't do it, which is great. It's absolutely brilliant for us, because we know every time we go out to see a vendor and the vendor says, well, I think it's only worth 80, but I owe 90, we categorically know we've got that deal. That's a really, really good position to be in before you even go out. If you're a deal sourcer, team up with agents as well, especially letting agents. You don't have to be a letting agent to take massive advantage of this. If you're a deal sourcer, go to letting agents, speak to them. They have got a pool of landlords probably wanting to sell up or get out of the industry with clause 24 and all the other tax changes, and literally by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning when the results come out, a few more landlords might want to get out of the industry. But team up with your agents, speak to your letting agents, explain how Rent to Own works, and you can really both take advantage of the strategy. It's a great way to earn additional income as well. So those deals that you couldn't monetize, that you're going to walk away from, you can still get lumpy sort of chunks of money and additional cash revenue. Letting agents, I think there's a couple on here tonight, and how it can increase your profits. We initially implemented this in our agency because one of our agencies had a sort of a higher standard of property, and we were taking on, say, 5, 6 a month, but we're losing 2 or 3 a month as well. Now, the reason we were losing them is because we had such a robust tenant referencing process and checks that landlords thought it was dead easy. So they were saying, well, look, I'm paying you 40, 50, 60 pound a month, and you're not doing anything, or so they thought. I'm going to manage it myself. So we had that natural attrition of landlords, and we wanted to be able to tie landlords in for a period of time. And that, as a letting agent, is what we did, because we tie the landlord in for the length of the option period. So we've got that residual income for a 5 to 10 year period. We also can earn a very lumpy income. Because as a letting agent, this is such a unique product, And I'm a very big believer in premium pricing. If you've got a really good product, charge for it. Know your worth, know your value, and charge for it. We're the only person in our area, and I know a lot of other people that are doing it down south, and they are the only people in their area doing it. So we charge the landlord a fee, and we charge the tenant buyer a fee as well, because nobody else is doing it. This is a unique strategy, so why not charge for it? So we can earn £3,000, £4,000 per rent-to-own property, 2,000 or 1,500 to 2,000 to the tenant buyer, and the same to the landlord.
John, just as we come to the end of the letting agents one, if we're able to, a couple of people have asked if we can go back a slide and talk through the deal sourcing and how that would work. So I just want to jump in now. So once we finish the letting agent bit, if we're okay to go back, that'd be brilliant.
Yeah, cool. So safeguard residual income. So we've tied in the landlord for a 5 to 10 year period. And we can do that because it's such a unique product, it's a unique strategy, and we're safeguarding the tenant buyers top up. So that's going in Castledeans, or if you're a letting agent, in your secure top up in your secure client account. So that is safeguarding your residual income where the landlord can't leave you for that period of time. Less work, we've already discussed about how it's around about 10 rent-to-own properties per one traditional property in terms of the amount of work done. And you can be the expert in your area. More work will come of this. Now, this is a really interesting one. So if you are the rent-to-own expert in your area, you are the trusted advisor, you are the expert, people will give you more work, and it won't necessarily be rent-to-own. So, for instance, we went out to do a rent-to-own property, and it wasn't right for this particular person. They wanted to just do a straight sale because they needed the money to move on. However, the sister had a rent-to-own property, and they actually gave us another family member a property to let, and we got the management off the back of that. So just by being the expert, the rent-to-own expert in your area, it might not be particularly right for that person at that particular time, but you will get more work, and people will actually sort of gravitate towards you because of how good you are on using this rent-to-own strategy and how unique this strategy is. And this will replace the loss of the tenant admin fees. So as we mentioned before, a tenant admin fee ban or upfront fee ban is coming in. I think with what's going on with the general election and Brexit and other bits and bobs, it might be next year. But who knows with the government, they could rush it through quite quick. But the admin fees are going to get banned, and this will replace the loss of those straight away. So yeah, I'll go back and. So what was the question? Sorry, just how?
Yeah, so how would this work? Imagine you're a deal source, and we kind of understand how it works on an ordinary, find a deal. It's got a reasonable yield on it, or it's a little bit of a B&B deal or whatever. Pass it on for a finder's fee. How does that change, or when you bring the sort of tenant buyer element into it?
Good question. Right. So you're a deal sourcer. You're going out to, you've got your websites, you've got your leaflet drop, and you're doing whatever you're doing to get these leads to come into you as a deal sourcer. So you're going out in the vendor's property, in the vendor's phone, or you're talking to them over the phone to get sort of the initial information. 99 times out of 100, if you hear that, if you know what the value of the property is, say it's worth 100, and they say, oh, well, I owe 105 or 110 on it, you can't sell that. Not the traditional way, no investor will buy.
I mean, even if they own 90 or 95, let's be honest, you or I, without this strategy, we'd be walking away at that point.
Oh, I don't know a single person who wouldn't. So in using rent-to-own, because remember we had 4% on each year, what we can say is, right, well, it's worth 100, you owe 110. How about this? In 5 years' time, you'll get £120,000. So that the vendor's saying, well, how's that? It's not worth 120. But because you future worked out, you future guaranteed the purchase price of 120, they win, they get to clear their mortgage off. You team up with a letting agent who manages it, tenant buyer, and you can share that lumpy income. So remember when I said you can charge a tenant buyer £1,500 and you can charge the landlord £1,500, that's £3,000 in the fee pot, if you want to call it that. So you as a deal sourcer can be the sort of middle person. You can find the properties, you can team up with letting agents, and you can say to them, right, I can't sell this, right, to my investor database. You can't sell it if you're an estate agent on the open market, because we both know that it's not worth what the vendor wants. How about we do a rent to own, you manage it, and you and me, Mr. Letting Agent, we'll just split the fee 50-50. So you get
so the owner of the property, the kind of, I know, for want of a better phrase, sort of distressed seller, is they're able to move on, but we're able to sit in the middle and make our profit from putting those two parties together.
Exactly. And we've done that on a number of occasions. Sometimes the tenant buyer can't move out, but you can't help everybody all the time. And we try and not fit a round peg in a square hole. So rent to own has to fit the seller's circumstances, as with any circumstance, isn't it? You know, you don't try and make a deal to fit you. You try and make it to fit the vendor.
Well, I think this is one of the things that comes up as we become more professional as investors. That, you know, the strategies don't really exist. Tools for our toolkit exist, don't they? So, you know, what we have to be able to do is to sit in that situation, whether or not it's a property that's on with a commercial agent for rent and for sale, or if we're sat with a motivated seller who hasn't got the equity in it. We need to be able to reach into our toolkit and bring the right tool out for the job. And I honestly believe that, you know, this is so niche that many people are leaving deals on the table because they just don't know how to do this, just don't know it exists.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The amount of people who I've spoke to about this strategy, and you can see them light bulb moment, and I said, what are you thinking about? There was this one last week that's been perfect for, or oh, my sister's, oh, that would have been perfect for that if I'd only known about this. So yeah, if you don't know what you don't know, so this strategy is absolutely ideal, but because there's not a lot of people doing it, there's so many deals getting left on the table. You're dead right. So quickly moving on. So I'm conscious of time, man, so I'll try and blast through this last couple. What contracts and forms do you use? So it's very, very simple. So if anybody's a landlord, you'll be completely aware of the tenancy agreement, and that's between the letting agency and the tenant buyer. There's a management agreement if you're a landlord and you've got a letting agent managing your properties. And also, if a few of you no doubt will have used lease options before, and that's between the tenant buyer and the landlord. Now, ours are very, very specific, and they all tie in together. So it's not a general tenancy agreement or a general option agreement or a very general management agreement. They're all pretty bespoke, and they all reference each other, so to tie it all in. But it's not that complicated. It's only three contracts or three documents that we use. So where do you find the landlords? Letting agents, estate agents, make them your new best friend. Speak to them about rent to own, how it can help them. If you've done any valuations before, so this is if you are a letting agent or if you are a deal sourcer, you've been out of property, and like we said just there, and you know, where a lot of people say, oh, this one worked last week, or 2 months ago this would have been perfect for. Pick up the phone and speak to them and say, right, this is what I offered you then. How about this? Can I come out and see you? I've got a strategy where I think I can help you. Pick up the phone and actually talk to your past valuations. Gumtree, Open Rent, Purple Bricks, you know, people trying to sell the properties, you know, phone them up and just have the guts to say, look, can I come out and see you? I might be able to help you. I've got this new strategy, that type of thing. Letters and leaflets. I'm a big believer in letters and leaflets, and just that constant touch point, that constant contact point of just sending them out to your market, to your target market, and eventually they will get through. We send out thousands on a monthly basis, and we get a reasonable response for it. We more than pay for itself. But the secret to prospecting is you've got to be extremely consistent. You can't just do this, 2 months of the year, 3 weeks of the month. You have to do this 24/7. Our guys do at least an hour a day, every single branch, week in, week out, they do it. And we find that some of our properties come on a year later, 2 years later, 3. Our records 5, 6 years later, that they said, oh, I got a letter off 6 years ago, and they've come on and we've let their property. That was for a let. But the point is, you've got to keep on doing it all the time. Now, tenant buyers, where do I find them? Believe it or not, the tenant buyers is the easiest part of the whole process. We put one Rightmove post on, and we got 152 inquiries from tenant buyers. We got more inquiries from tenant buyers than the previous year we had it on when we were trying to let it out. It was unbelievable. More people wanted to buy it than they did actually want to rent it out. And we did that. We also do a lot of Facebook. So we've got quite a reasonable online presence on our company page. If you haven't got a company page, get one. It works incredibly well. And obviously when you do the first couple, 2, 3, 4, 5, word of mouth, as soon as you start helping people, they'll start shouting about you and how you help them. So word of mouth is always a great advertisement. And we've never had an issue with finding tenant buyers. We've always had an abundance. If you get decent properties, you'll be amazed at how many people want to buy a property but can't buy it because of the financial circumstances. Hence why a rent-to-own is perfect for them. So just a couple of quick case studies. So this is the property where I said that the guy had put brand new windows in. So this is the 1950s in a little town called Peterlee. Purchase price is 75,000. The rent is 475. You probably get 500 for it because it's a 3-bed, and the top up's 125 per month. So they're paying £600 a month for that property over a 5-year period. And the couple have been in 2 years. They've got 0 arrears and 0 top up, and they've replaced all the windows. And the problem with this was that the man had a CCJ from 5 years previous from a previous relationship. He gone and got some credit in his ex-wife's name. They split up. She refused to pay him. He refused to pay it off out of principal. And look, principal got him. We got him half a dozen CCJs. So I think he learned from his mistake. And him and his new partner and new family moved into this property. And yeah, they're on target to buy it as early as they possibly can. So it's another case study. This is actually my old house before I moved down to the old rectory. So it's 8 years old. We've agreed 165,000 on that. The rent is 675, top up of 266, and it's a 5-year term. And they've been in 3 years, 2 months, which is how long we've been down the rectory. And they've got no arrears to top up, and they've decorated absolutely every room in the house. It's absolutely brand spanking new in there. And Mark, the guy who took the house off us, he's got a really good job, but he had low credit. Similar thing when he was young and daft. He got a couple of CCJs, didn't pay a telephone bill here and there, so it really, really reduced his credit. But him and his new partner and the kids, they're loving the place, taking good care of the property, and they're hopefully going to purchase that before the 5 years, actually, which would be absolutely fantastic for everybody.
So, John, can I ask, in terms of the top-up payment, I think this is a really interesting, well, a couple of people have asked it, where does that sit? Because I know 5, 6 years ago, we saw people who were doing this, they didn't really, I don't think they were doing rent-to-own properly, and they were collecting those top-up payments and just putting it in the bank. Now, that's, how does it work? How do you do this correctly?
So a couple of things, right? So if you're going to do this, if you're a letting agent, it has to be a secure client account. So it's got to be a separate secure client account, i.e. another bank account. If you're a landlord and you're looking after your own portfolio, exactly the same. They're very easy to get. These client accounts, you just go to your local bank, say, I need a client account to put in rents, some top-ups, and they should open one, and it shouldn't be a problem. If you don't want to manage the property or you don't want to manage the top-up, team up with another letting agent. And the one thing I would say is make sure they are what is called ARLA, which is the Association of Residential Letting Agents, ARLA accredited, or NALS accredited, which is National Approved Letting Scheme. Now, whilst that does not 100% guarantee they're not shysters or charlatans, because they have joined voluntary organisations, and especially in ARLA's case, you've got to go through some qualifications, you've got to go through exams to be able to join. The fact is, they're going to be decent people. I've got a declaration of a conflict of interest. I'm actually on the board of directors for ARLA, so I'm pushing that a little bit. But in the main, ARLA and NALS accredited agents are better than non-ARLA or NALS accredited agents. So if you don't want to manage them yourself, and what we found is if you're a deal sourcer, it's a different mentality. You're all about the sale. You're all about the making the deal, doing the sale. If you're managing properly, it's very processy. It's very sort of procedural, and the two tend to be oil and water. So if you're a deal sourcer, don't try and manage the property. It's not your bag. team up with an agent, get that headache away, and allow you free your time to do more of the deal sourcing and bring those deals in.
Okay, so brilliant question. Really good questions coming in. So Shane's just asked, would it not be more advantageous for a tenant to do a purchase lease option where they can pull out without any penalty and they're not responsible for the maintenance? It's a brilliant question. John, what's your thoughts on that?
So that they can pull out without...
Yeah, so Shane said if you were the tenant, putting yourself in the tenant situation, it would be better for them to be able to do a purchase lease option where, but whilst they have the option to buy it, they don't have the obligation, so they can sort of pull out at any point without losing their top up. But I guess most tenants wouldn't be aware of purchase lease options, and most landlords wouldn't want to enter into that agreement without the degree of certainty that they're getting with a tenant buyer.
So this effectively is a purchase lease option. So they've got the option to buy it, not the obligation. And that's one of the things that allows this not to be a regulated product. I won't go into too much detail about that because it does get quite complicated. So effectively it's just an option to purchase it. Now, I do hear what's being said about, like, they don't lose the top up, but we want the tenant to have a financial vested interest in this. The landlord is going into this agreement, this contract, in the hope that he is going to sell the property and realise some of his profit. If the tenant didn't have a financial vested interest in this, then the amount of pullouts that the tenant buyers would have, and therefore the landlords would lose, would dramatically increase. It's a little bit like this. Once this has been brought up by a tenant buyer, where we explain that you lose all your money, so you've got to be 100% sure. We've got disclaimers in all our paperwork, and we explain it as plain English. And the tenant buyer said, well, why should I lose all my money if I can't buy it or I won't buy it? And we said, well, just imagine this. You bought yourself a nice little two-seater BMW, right? You get married, your wife has twins, it doesn't fit anymore, right? Do you get to say to BMW, can I keep the car and can I have all my money back that I've ever paid? Of course you don't. You've got to make a choice based on your circumstances and based on where you want to go in life, and is this right for you, and just make that choice that I will be financially committed to purchasing this property. And it is a little bit like a mortgage. So we've done this, and I am absolutely aware that if I don't purchase this property, then I lose all the money that I've saved up and put into the secure client account of my property. And I'm okay with that because I've been grown up enough to do all my sums before we move in, understand what I need to save up, understand what I need to earn in order to get a mortgage. And I've got into it completely wide-eyed and made sure that, if I do lose it, then I can't blame, if I don't purchase it and I lose the money, then unfortunately it's my fault and I can't blame anybody else.
Okay. So John, loads of questions piling in. So, but what we're going to do is, I think we're going to save some of those for as we get towards the end in about sort of 15, in about 10 minutes time, so we can do a really good session on sort of, on Q&A. So we've got some brilliant ones coming in, and thank you. And now is the time. If there's anything you're not sure about, if you're wondering how to fit rent to own into your portfolio, into your toolkit, now is the time to ask. So. John, we sort of full disclosure, we said that people would be given an opportunity if they wanted to further their learning. So do we want to cover that now?
Yeah, cool. I mean, guys, appreciate you bearing with us. This is literally 5, 6, 7 minutes. It's not going to be a hard sell. But I just want to, hopefully the time that you've sat here, and I really do, me and Ant do appreciate you sitting on an evening listening to us drone on. But hopefully it's been worthwhile to you. But we have got an option. If you do want to take this to the next level, do you want more net profit from your portfolio? How do you find your forever home like I have? And how do you use rent to own to monetize deals that you would normally walk away from? And if you're a letting agent, how can you use rent to own to increase the income to beat the tenant admin fee ban? So I've actually produced, I've designed, and I've made, and I've written a rent to own business in a box. And it is exactly what it is. It is a box with a manual in, all the forms, the contracts, absolutely everything that we use in our business you get. This isn't where I say I've given you some forms and contracts and we don't actually use them. everything that is in this business in the box, I promise you, that we use. So what's included? It's a 150-page operations manual, and I wrote that myself. It's got all the paperwork, the option agreements, the tenancy agreements, the management agreements. It's even got I've got a copy of the FCA consultancy compliance report, and I get that upgraded and I get that redone every year. And it's got a copy of that one, and the next one gets done back into this year, and you'll get a brand new copy of that. Ultimately, it's got everything you need to start doing rent to own and to do it now. So, operations manual in the contents: how to sell it to landlords and tenant buyers, buzzwords, buzz sentences, how to get them on board, how to attract landlords and tenant buyers, where do you go and why, where do you advertise them for? Is it Rightmove? Is it the sales side? Is it for the let side? What properties are suitable? I've even put in copies of sales letters. I've got some more case studies. I've got another 3 or 4 case studies, so you can see the types of properties are suitable. And really important, it's got every single major question that we've ever been asked in the last 4 years. So anything that you're asking tonight is in there, so you don't have to, what did John say? What did Anne say about? It's all written down for you, and then some. FCA compliance report, it's got a professional opinion why this product does not need to be regulated by the FCA. All the contracts, it's got the blank contracts and also completed ones, so you can see how to complete them. I've also done 6 PowerPoint videos on the various aspects of rent to own. So I think the shortest one's 20 minutes, the longest is 1 hour and 20. All in all, it's about 4.5 to 5 hours of my northern dulcet tones explaining rent to own. And again, it's got absolutely everything you need to get started using this strategy. So it's got the same systems I used to find my forever home. There's nothing that's been held back. We had 45k to our income, to our agency, and it's still grown. Same system used to increase my net profit by 28% on my personal portfolio, and it's the same system we use in our investment company to do all the deal sourcing. It's the only product out there that gives you a full turnkey business in a box solution for rent to own. So we're going to add some bonuses. So I really want to stack this very high. I want to make sure that if you want to take this next level and you want to invest in it, you are going to get huge added value to this product. So we've added our branding guidelines. So I am licensing, easy for me to say, to everyone that buys this product, our logo. So our logo is all trademarked, it's copyrighted, but if you buy this product, you can get to use it if you wish. So as you can see on the left-hand side, that's the rent-to-own folders. You've got the rent-to-own leaflets. We've got the letterheads, the compliment slips, the business cards. Everything you need to get started. There's nothing being left out. So you don't even have to think about, what do I call it? What colours should I use? Because we've tried them. It's that lovely olive gold, greeny colour that we get. We split tested them all to find out which colours we get, the wording we get, everything that you can use to start straight away. We've got another bonus as well. I'm going to give you our checklists. So as I said before, we're very systemised and very procedural and processy. So everything we use, you're going to get. So the checklists that will keep you on track. You know, there's 2 sides to those. So for those of you who are trying to frantically take pictures, there's the double-sided. So we've got a new property checklist. So when you take on a property, what do you need? So that complies with all modern legislation, up-to-date legislation and regulations. But also on the right-hand side, the tenant approval checklist. What do I need when I put a tenant buyer into this property? What information is needed to ensure that we've done everything correctly? Another bonus. We've got a Facebook support group. So anybody that buys the rent to own goes on our rent to own Facebook support group. I'm on there, my managing director's on there. I've even managed to twist my solicitor's arm. So he posts on there. So if there's any questions, legal, financial, operational, marketing, I'm on there, and we pretty much answer 24/7. We've got a community of about 50 or 60 people already on there doing the doing the deals. We put examples up, case studies, we share problems, we share issues, and it's a real good, tight community for people doing our rent to own. So, one-off payment of £1,497, but we all know how this works. We're going to do a bit of a deal. So, Ant and I have discussed this, and we're going to do an introductory offer of 997 for absolutely everything, all the bonuses, the operations manual, the forms, everything. But we want to take away all the barriers for you, because we appreciate that 997 might be a little bit sort of on the high side for some people. So we want to do a payment plan. So it's 3 times 397, 1191 for this. I've got to say that this, you know, it's a real good value. It's a, you know, we're trying to take down all the barriers that will allow you to purchase this product and start using rent to own. So click on the link, yourpropertynetwork.co.uk/RTO. Buy the product, it will give you the payment options, and this will be shipped from Castlemaine HQ. So I'll have our admin staff ship it, and you will receive it by recorded delivery within the next 5 working days, probably sooner, but we've had to allow for 5 working days.
George is just reminding me, George is busy in the background, sort of answering a lot of questions, that we've sorted it so that if anyone does take advantage of that this evening, they've got instant access to the Facebook group tonight. So that happens immediately. And there's also a couple of different payment options. So you can either pay in one go, or you can break it down into 3 sort of more manageable payments, whichever is right for you. Obviously, this isn't a product. This is right for everybody. John, John's been open tonight, saying that he's probably the only guy in his area that's doing this. So, if we were doing a webinar on HMOs or whatever, then probably, everybody's trying to do it. It's a very different thing. It's a niche strategy, and one that, is, we started the webinar by saying, massively underutilized. It's probably one of the most misunderstood tools in the toolkit. And if we understand that we can be piecing these deals together when people don't have the equity in a property to sell, I certainly know when I used to do loads of leafleting, 80% of the people I sat in front of, I could never buy their home because they just didn't have enough equity in it. So if we realise that, we realise just how powerful this can be. Yeah,
exactly. So in summary, we've got the operations manual. So the price I've came up with, because I wrote that myself. I know the amount of time I spent on it. The options agreement, because that's what we pay for it. Same with the tenancy, the EST and the management agreement. The FCA consultancy compliance report, that's exactly what I've paid for it. The branding guidelines, again, that's what we've paid for it. The forms, the rent to own support group, definitely priceless. It's constant, it's 24/7 support to help people try and use rent to own and really push this strategy forward. So the total value is 20k plus. It's at least worth that amount of money. So just to go over it, it's payment plans. It's either 3 lots of 397, or it's one-off of 997. And that is it, people. Thank you very much for listening. I'm assuming we've got quite a few Q&A.
We've got a lot of questions that have come in, and what we're going to do is, we quite often do this at this point in the evening. We're going to have what's called a sort of 2-minute comfort break, and I think that's the politest way of putting these things, because we've been on here for the best part of an hour and a half. So it's literally 2 minutes where, put it bluntly, if you need to go for a wee, go for a wee. If you want to go and grab a glass of water, that's what I'm going to do now. We've sent you through the link, so people can literally click on that now. If you want to buy it now, you can buy it now. If you want to click on it now, and so you've got the link open. So once we finish the webinar, in about 10 minutes time, you've got that ready. You can make the purchase. As we say, rent to own, it's a massively underutilized strategy. I genuinely only invite the people onto these webinars that I've known and have worked with for years. I've known John Paul for the best part of a decade now. I've got a massive amount of admiration and respect for him. I love what he's doing in property, and you all loved it when he put his forever home on the screen as well. So we're going to leave that link up there for about 2-3 minutes now. So if you want to do that now, you can do it. We're going to come back in about 2 minutes time and cover your questions, and we've got some great questions coming in. So we will catch up with you again in 2 minutes.
So for everybody that's online this evening, we're taking a couple of minutes just whilst John and Ant take a break after the amazing content they shared with us this evening to take a bit of a break. If you want to take advantage of John's amazing offer and get your business in the box for your rent-to-own opportunity, just head along to www.yourpropertynetwork.co.uk/RTO or click on the link that I put through in your chat box and you should take advantage of that now.
Hi George, I'm back on the line. I was talking for a couple of minutes there, but I think I accidentally muted myself, so I'm not quite sure how that worked. But do we have John back on the line?
Do
Hello, buddy. All right. Okay. So, you know what? You had me really worried. Then I was chatting away and I couldn't hear you, and it was all my fault, as these things normally are. So, so some brilliant questions coming in. We've had a couple of people ask actually how your thoughts on how rent to own can work in the London market, in those sort of very competitive markets. Is this a strategy that can be adapted? Is this a toolkit that can be adapted for the faster paced property markets?
No, I mean, yeah, I'm going to be completely honest here. If you've got an incredibly hot market where, you know, it goes up and you've got 20 people trying to view it over a weekend, then rent to own's not going to be for you. This has to be, something's got to be in it for the landlord. You know, they've got to want to rent it or want to let it out to a tenant buyer, or they're going to want that enhanced future purchase price. So, you know, I'm not one of these people that say, you know, LHA is the bee's knees, surface accommodation will always work, rent to own's the, you know, the be all and end all. But very, very hot market, rent to own doesn't work. But outside the bubble that is London, it can pretty much work anywhere and everywhere. We have got some of our clients and our mentees who who've bought the rent to own business in the box at all parts of the country, are using it to full effect.
Okay, brilliant. And even obviously clearly in very desirable properties like you own, John, you know, you can see that this strategy that can work. So Robert's got a brilliant question here. He's interested in, he's typed in and said, I'm interested in understanding what happens in the unlikely scenario that property goes down in price below, but I think it's put below the auction price. So rather than it going, you know, up in value, how does that work, John? How do you kind of deal with a more uncertain property market?
So yeah, really good question actually. It's the same as what would happen in a normal market. So the option or the purchase price is still fixed. So we'll use, for argument's sake, say the baseline is £100,000. That's what it's worth today. We agree, me and you, I'm the landlord, you're the tenant buyer. We agree £120,000, and everything's going great. There's a bit of a crash, and the purchase and the property doesn't get to that £120,000. Now, in that scenario, you've got a couple of options. One, you can put more money in if you've got it to try and to get it up to the £120,000. So not only do you put the deposit in, but you pay me more. So it's actually still being bought at £120,000. But the most likely scenario, and yet again, this sort of goes back to we don't want to deal with unscrupulous people or I don't want to swear, but arsehole, basically. We want to deal with decent people who are prepared to renegotiate, and you know, we're all people by people, so we know who we're going to have difficult conversations with. And we just go back and you can say, look, John, it's the property price fell off a cliff. Even if you try to sell this on the open market, you're not going to get £120,000 for it. Can we settle at 110? I might say 115, you might say 112, and we agree on 130. Whatever it is. But the point is, it's always open to renegotiation. You know, if I'm going to stick to my guns and I'm saying, no, we agreed 120, it's not my fault that it fell off a cliff, then more fool me, because I'm not going to be able to sell that property and realise that profit. So I've got to be realistic as a landlord. But equally, on the converse side, if property prices go through the roof, the landlord has signed an agreement to say that he will sell it for £120,000. So as unlikely as it might be, if the property's worth 130, the landlord can't then change his mind and say, I want 130. It's a legally binding contract that if the landlord refuses to sell or wants more money, and the landlord, and it's against and breaks the contract, the tenant buyer can sue under specific performance, because it's the landlord that is breaking that contract.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Brilliant question, and really, really well answered there, I think. So, And I think I might make this, one of the last questions that we cover this evening, I think is a brilliant one. Paul's messaged in saying, he says, I've done one of these before in York, but we had the rent stepped, so it rose each year. I'm not sure if it was perhaps in line with inflation or, in line with market rents at an agreed figure. Is this something that you can adapt into the strategy? I'm going to make an assumption, yes, because these are commercial contracts and we can write in them what we want. So clearly, this worked for Paul. Is that something that can be adapted in your experience, John?
It can, and we chose not to. But you're dead right. It can, and for this reason, we want to make this as fair and as equitable as possible, right? If we are getting on average a 28% net increase in your net profit on an annual basis, I'm happy with that. So I'm not really trying to, I'm not saying that the guy who asked the question is, so, I hope it doesn't come across this way. We're not bothered about trying to squeeze every single penny out of the tenant buyer for a couple of reasons. I'm happy with 28%. I'm really, that's got no problem with that. And the second reason is the more you try and increase the rent, the more difficulty that tenant buyer is going to come into. So we don't know what the future holds with them. If you keep it fixed for the 5 year, you're still earning that up to 28% net profit, but the tenant buyer is happy with it because they know where they are for the next 5 years. If they're added value to your
I was going to say, John, I guess it depends on your market as well, doesn't it? Where in a couple of the areas where I've got properties, the rents have been pretty stagnant. They haven't really moved that much. If you're doing this in, maybe a sort of faster moving property market where rents, are escalating a lot more quickly, it might be something that's a bit more acceptable to bring into the contract. So I guess it just depends.
You could do. I mean, like I said, we did have a look at it, and the reason we didn't want to do it was just because we didn't want to put that much pressure on the tenant buyer. So we wanted. It's about your market, isn't it? The fairer it is, or the easier it is for a tenant buyer to purchase the property, the more choice you're going to have. So you make it, you step it up on an annual basis. A few tenant buyers aren't going to like it. If you see the tenant buyer's got to do this and jump through hoops, you're going to reduce your potential market, as in the tenant buyers. So for us, it was just about striking that happy balance. But you're dead right, and you can step it up with inflation. The beauty about rent to own is that so long as the principles and the main structure is right, and we talk about this on the forum, and I'm sure we say this in the manual as well. So long as the main structure is right and the principles and the ethics are right, there is a little bit of leeway and a little bit of flexibility in how you structure it in the little terminology. So that's the beauty of it. Whereas a lot of other stuff, it is what it is. Tenants, LHA, service accommodation, HMOs, legislation and regulation govern how you do it. But this, because of the way it's structured, it has got that little bit of flexibility.
Okay, I love this strategy. One of the things I really love about it is the surety of it. So I know I could put £20,000 in as a buy-to-let deposit. Now I could fix my interest rate. I know I've got my tenant buyer coming in. I know they're going to take care of all the maintenance issues. So I know exactly how much net profit I'm going to make monthly. And I know exactly what my exit's going to be because I've already planned it out. So I can take my £20,000 as a deposit and know I'm going to get that back plus, let's say, another, I think in your case it was another £20,000, wasn't it? Because the property was going to go up in value over the 5 years by the 4%, giving me a sale price of 120,000. So I'd know that I'd be making my 40,000 back plus my rental income. So I love the surety of this as a strategy, and particularly coupled with sort of deal sourcing side of things, where it means that we can sit in the middle and make a profit, make a very healthy profit from the properties which normally we would walk away from. So, John, it genuinely is a business in a box, and you have spent, I know you spent many man hours, and you are a system addict. That old tune from the 80s there, but never mind, I'm showing my age. So, this is, we can pick it up, we can do this from day one. I also like that it's got the support attached to it in terms of the Facebook group, contact through that with you, with your team and with your solicitor on there, because I know normally they'd be charging an arm and a leg for that kind of advice. So it's not for everybody, but for some people, this is going to make the difference, a massive difference to their property business.
Oh, huge. This is really, I mean, this really took us to another level in terms of the letting agency, but the amount of opportunities that come off the back of this is quite immense as well. I'm very biased, but you've seen the property that it's got me and my family. The letting agency, it's massively increased the income and the profitability on it. And we're buying houses as well, so we're using this to buy our properties for myself, for our clients. It's just a great strategy. It's a real win-win for everybody that comes into contact with this, whether you're a tenant buyer, a deal source, or a letting agent. Everybody wins. I don't know another single strategy that can help and touch as many people in a positive way.
Absolutely. So what we're going to do, we're going to wind this webinar up now, because we said we're going to be on here for about an hour, maybe up to an hour and a half, and we're approaching an hour and 45 minutes now. We're very conscious that this is time that quite often you'd spend with your family, your loved ones, or hanging out with friends, or whatever it is, or winding down after a hard day running your property business, or in your job, or whatever it is you do. We really appreciate the time that you spend with us and you give up to listen to me and John waffle on for the best part of 2 hours. We hope, yeah. So we genuinely hope that you listen to this and the purpose of it. There's a small sell there. We hope you don't think that we've been trying to force this on you. It's definitely not the purpose of it at all. That really is for people who just want to take this to the next level and start implementing it straight away. So we hope it's demystified and got rid of some of the kind of smoke and mirrors around one of these property strategies. There's a huge amount of misunderstanding in property, and some people, really kind of make a living from making things very, very complicated. The purpose of these webinars is to simplify it so you understand how this particular tool, this particular strategy can aid you in your property business. So we hope you've enjoyed it. We hope you've been maybe informed and entertained a bit and enjoyed it as much as we have. I'm going to do a final massive thank you to John for coming on and sharing this evening. He's someone I've got a huge amount of respect for. I can't say that enough. We've been good pals for a long time now, and I really do invite the people that I know and trust onto these webinars to share their experience. So John, massive thanks. I'm going to just leave that link up there now. So if people want to go to yourpropertynetwork.co.uk/RTO, so that's RTO, rent to own, you can go on there. You can take advantage of the special offer this evening. You can break it down into 3 payments if that's easier for you, and get implementing this stuff right now. So we're going to leave the webinar running with the link on there, but I'm going to say good night. And John, thank you again.
Thanks again, mate. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening.